Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's The Magical Quest, starring Mickey Mouse for the SNES, brought to us by Capcom. Disney and Capcom teamed up for some of the absolute best games available for the original Nintendo. And when Nintendo came out with the Super Nintendo, Disney and Capcom would team up again to create some more great games, including the Magical Quest series. While only 2 of the 3 Magical Quest games made the North American shores until the GBA was released, it still didn't mean that the Magical Quest series wasn't a fantastic one for the SNES. In Magical Quest, we take control of Mickey Mouse as he travels through a mysterious land in order to save his dog Pluto from the evil Emperor Pete. Like many other games of its generation, Magical Quest has multiple difficulties, as well as an options menu where you can also change up the controls and change from mono to stereo. Magical Quest is also a 2-player game, allowing you to switch off between one another each time one person loses a life. However, it's much funner in the sequel, where you actually could play co-op with Mickey and Minnie. As Mickey begins his search for Pluto, he starts off in Level 1, the Treetops. The mechanics for Magical Quest are actually pretty interesting. Mickey has multiple costumes that we will be getting throughout the game that allow him to have different abilities. As default Mickey Mouse, though, you can pick up objects in the background, and you can also stomp on enemies and then pick them up to use them as well. The enemies that you'll actually pick up and throw actually become like spinning tops and will fly and take out other enemies. After taking only a few steps into the game, we come to a house where we run into this magician, who tells us a little bit more about the world, as well as tells us about the costumes. After we're done talking to the old wizard, we can now continue on. Picking up blocks can be used as weapons, as well as you can pick up certain items, such as these berries in the background. You can actually pick them and hold on to them for a while, or let go of them, and they'll start spinning, going upwards. While holding on to the berry, you'll actually also fly up with it, holding on to it, and it'll allow you to travel the higher parts of levels. As you can see right here, I can use it to fly up and find these clouds, which will take me to a platform with a few extra coins. Now, in a lot of games, coins may be used just for score, but also in Mickey Mouse's Magical Quest, you can actually find shops throughout the game and buy certain items, mainly health as well as energy replenishments for your different costumes. Be careful in the first area when walking over the spiked vines, as well as try to either jump over or use one of the blocks to take out some of the enemies. Near the beginning of the second area, we soon come to a large red tomato. Either jumping on it or going past it will cause it to start rolling downhill quickly. You can actually just let it push you and you stand still on it and it won't actually run you over, thankfully, but you also have to be careful that it doesn't push you into spikes, enemies, or pits. One of the interesting mechanics, and you'll have to get used to it, is anytime Mickey does take a hit, he actually lands and stands still for a second and then shakes off the damage. This gives you a current amount of invincibility that you'll have that'll allow you to actually bypass enemies that may be walking by, but it also can get a little bit of annoying because it kind of stops the gameplay for a few seconds. At the end of part 2 of level 1, we come to our first boss battle of the game. This mini-boss, this imp, flies back and forth, swooping down, giving you a good opportunity to jump up and land on top of him and do some damage. To do some more damage if you like, you can drop down some of the enemies that he throws at you, pick them up, and launch them at him by doing the spinning top attack in order to hurt them as well. It'll take a decent amount of hits to actually take him out, so just be very careful of the enemies that he throws out, as well as be far enough away that when he swoops down, you're either ready to jump over him or on top of him, or be far enough away that you can duck under his attack as well. Once you deliver the final blow to him, you can continue on and move to part 1-3. 1-3 is filled with water. Thankfully, you can land and Mickey can easily swim. You have to be careful though, underwater in some areas there will be a few enemies to deal with. These bee enemies you've been seeing are probably one of the most annoying early on in the game, because once their stingers come out and they start chasing you, they will keep following you until you're able to finally get a good jump on top of them, or being able to launch a block into them. You can see I was able to pull that block just a few seconds ago in order to get a large amount of hearts. I only needed one, but they give you plenty of extras as well, after which we'll be climbing on some logs and over a beaver dam. As long as you stay on top of the water, you'll be able to avoid the beaver, as well as be able to get it over easily. "1-4 contains our first actual stage boss. Now this boss is a large snake-like enemy. You have 2 red blocks on the left and right side. They have an infinite amount of blocks that you can keep taking, and these will be your main weapon in order to hurt the enemy. You have to hit the enemy in the face in order to actually cause pieces of him to break off. However, you can't hurt him when he's red, so you have to wait for him to turn back to his normal skin tone before you actually be able to launch a block or one of the pieces of his own body back at him. Really, for the most part, just stand on top or near one of the blocks on either left or right side, and just jump over him when he comes flying towards you, or go under him if he jumps above you. It won't take too many hits and you'll see an evil spirit leave the snake as you defeat him, and you complete stage 1. At the beginning of Stage 2, we run into the old wizard again, who gives us our very first costume of the game. When Mickey is wearing his magical turban, he can actually charge up abilities and launch them at enemies. Using these charged up ball attacks are probably one of the best attacks overall in the whole game. However, you do have a limited amount of energy, and you'll have to pick up magic lamps or buy them in shops in order to actually replenish your energy for it. One of the few negative things about that costume, as well as the next one we'll get, is that it replaces the ability to pick up enemies or pick up blocks, so you'll have to switch back to normal Mickey in order to actually pick him up again. Be careful and bounce along these trees in order to get yourself up to these blocks and on top of this cliff. After we jump on a few leaves that are moving back and forth over a large pit, we'll get to the opposite side where we'll enter another one of those peak doors and enter 2-2. In 2-2, we're inside of a large tree that seemingly is filled with water. The path inside of the tree is pretty linear, so you shouldn't have too much trouble making your way through. Stay in your turban mode in order to take out any of the crab enemies that try to get in your way. While also swimming through, anytime you come to one of those solid sea anemones, make sure that you blast it real quick and it'll open up, and then quickly swim through or else it'll close back up on you, in which case it'll then do damage. After exiting the tree, climb up a few branches, up to here, and it's time for another mini-boss. Thankfully, they give you a magic lamp charge-up power, so you can use it immediately on this boss. Start up by holding the button to charge up your attack, and just start launching at it anytime the boss gets close to you. He bounces around, and it can be a little bit tricky to exactly hit him, but anytime he lands, as long as you're walking the opposite direction, you should be able to quickly turn around and launch a blast at him. The only thing you really have to dodge is his 3-shot projectile he shoots out right around him, but still, if you're walking away from him as he jumps, you should be able to avoid it. Once he's done, we complete 2-2 and it's time to move on to the third part of Stage 2. In this level, there's lots of different totems that are bringing down large clubs. The totems can hurt you either way when the club's up or down, so you have to choose your path wisely whether you want to step right in front of them or jump on top of them to get by. Just take your time and choose the correct path that you like best to try to do your best to avoid taking damage during that part, because we do have a boss coming up in 2-4. In 2-4, be careful when you start bouncing up these tree branches. Have your turban power ready in case you need it to blast one of the cocoon-style enemies that are attached to the trees. Then, jump down bouncing off one of the leaves and you'll eventually land in the boss's area. Be sure to grab the magic lamp on the right side because we're going to be needing it to take out this giant spider boss. When it comes on screen, you have to attack it directly in the face, so start charging up your powers and launching them directly at it. When his back is towards you, he will shoot out a web, so try to be away from that when it shoots out. Once he turns pink, he only has a few shots left, and when you run out of your turban ability, you may need to just jump on top of his face. Wait for the right opportunity for his face to be coming towards you, and then bounce off his cheeks a couple of times to finish him off and complete level 2. Level 3 is the Fire Grotto, and just like its name suggests, we're going to be going deep down inside the land in order to get to a fiery pit of hell. The first part of the stage has it scrolling down like an elevator with spikes on the top part as you stand on the bottom platform. Just be careful that the different amounts of blocks that are built up don't cause you to end up getting pulled too much up towards the ceiling and having your head touch those spikes. For the most part though, as you've seen, there is a few different strategies when it comes especially to the bosses of this game, and different costumes that you get can work differently against all the bosses. So my strategy may not necessarily be the best strategy in order to take them out, it's just particularly which ones I decided to do in order to help me get by some of these bosses. Once the path opens up a little bit, be sure to walk over to the right so it doesn't end up squashing you as the rocks on the bottom will start building up. Once you get far enough over to the right, you'll get some turbine power as it's time for another mini-boss. This boss holds a large club and slams it on the ground, and when he does, whatever platform you're standing under will shoot up with a big thing of lava and a rock that causing you to go upwards towards the ceiling of spikes. If you're standing on that rock when it gets launched up, be sure to hold left or right so you can get off of it. Thankfully though, it doesn't take too many charged up shots of Mickey's turbine power to take out this mini-boss and move on to the next section of the level. At the beginning of 3-2, we get our next costume, the Firefighter outfit. Once again, we won't be able to pick up blocks and we can't charge up our ability, but now when Mickey attacks, he shoots out a stream of water, which can actually hurt certain enemies that are little flames, as well as put out different fires on platforms that we'll be using later on. Also, Mickey's water jet isn't just used for putting out fire, as it can also damage bosses, so it can be an effective weapon of choice to take out later bosses in the game. If you get knocked off any of the flame platforms and land in the fire below, be quick that you're not still standing on it once your invulnerability goes away. And if you land over to the right, you can destroy that big block and get yourself a Mickey extra life. You have to put out the fires on the platforms, and do so before they end up getting reset on fire by the holes in the walls that spit the fire out. Same thing pretty much goes for these platforms as they rise up and down. If they hit the ceiling or the bottom, they'll catch fire again and you'll have to put them back out as you try to make your way over to the right. In 3-3, we have these totem-style rocks that move up and down, and you'll have to jump on them at the right portions to get by. The cool thing about them is, if you don't feel like actually trying to sneak by on them while they're moving, you can actually use Mickey's water jet to move them and push them in a more favorable position. This will especially come in handy later on in the game in the final stage, where we'll have to do this in order to reach the boss. Along this way, you have a large amount of fire coming down from the ceiling. Watch out for the fire platforms that will be moving up and down, and just when the fire's coming down, if you duck, it'll just barely miss over your head and you'll be able to get by. During this large section of rock platforms, use Mickey's water jet to push them around so you can sneak past. Just like the previous level, 3-4 is signaling that we now have a boss. This is actually the big boss of the stage, and then it starts off, you have these moving platforms that rotate around it. Use Mickey's water jet and just hit it directly in the face. When it changes colors, it'll also change directions of the platforms. Just keep firing at him and it'll slow down, allowing you to get tons of hits in on him. If you're quick about it, he won't even be able to get out his main projectile weapon, which will set different platforms on fire. I find it pretty much easy just to remain on the same platform as it keeps rotating around and just keep launching water at him. If for some reason you do run out of the water ability, jump on one of the other platforms that you'll see a fire hydrant on in order to regain the power. Once you defeat him, you get your congratulations screen for completing level 3 and we move on to stage 4. In 4-1, we run into Goofy, who happens to tell us that he still hasn't found Pluto, but he'll give us our next suit. Mickey's cliffhanger costume is the final costume of the game. This one allows us to shoot out a grappling hook, which will allow us to cling on to platforms of all different types. Throughout this stage, you'll be pretty much using it for almost the whole level, and I'll be using it for even the boss battle, even though it may not be the best strategy to keep using this costume during that. For an easier way to damage this soldier enemy, just take a shield using the grappling hook, and then you'll be able to hit him easily from the front. Any fan of the Bionic Commando series should have no problem getting used to Mickey's grappling hook. It works pretty much the exact same way as Bionic Commando's arm. Be careful on this platform, for another one of those bee enemies may try to get in your path. And then when you get over here, wait for the ball to move up in the air and then use your grappling hook to swing across to the other platforms. The thing you have to watch out the most though is there's large streams of air. Just make sure you don't take a jump when the stream is going, or else it'll take you right down into a pit. 4-3 is actually the boss battle, as we only have 3 parts in this stage. Now there is multiple ways to defeat this boss, however I'm going to be using only the grappling hook to take him out in this battle. For a little bit of a quicker fight, you may want to use Mickey's other powers. This large bird has multiple different types of attacks. Its main one is it'll crack open an egg, and one of 2 things will come out of it. It'll either be a couple of little birds that you'll be able to hit on the top of their heads, in which case you can then use them as weapons, and then he'll also use egg yolks that'll come out and run across the ground. The main thing you really have to watch out for in this battle is when he comes out from the background and flies forward. When he does this, it causes the whole area to really get a big rush of wind, knocking you off to the left or right side. The only way you're going to be able to avoid falling into the gaps on the left and right side is to swing onto the 2-ball grappling spots to make sure that you're able to stay on the stage. In order to actually inflict damage on this enemy, you're going to have to jump on top of the other little enemies and then throw them at him when you get an opportunity. Sometimes it can take a little bit for him finally to start allowing you to hit him. However, once you start getting into a groove, being able to pick up enemies and launching them at him, and he keeps leaving more enemies for you to pick up, the battle will start to pick up. Once you deliver the final hit, another one of those evil spirit Petes will come out and you complete the stage. No great platformer will be complete without a snow level, and that's where we are, the Snowy Valley. In this stage, you can now change up your abilities. We have them all, so just go ahead and pick whichever one you like the best for at least the beginning part. There's several different spots of grappling spots, so you can use them, but your main thing is just to watch out for these little growths that are coming out of the ground. If you run into them, they end up bouncing you off like a spring in the different directions. And this includes the different amounts of ice that you can jump on and slide on, and it'll cause them to go in opposite directions from where you would want to be traveling. Part 2 of Stage 5 is mainly made up of the large amounts of ice blocks that you can slide across and ride them along platforms. Just of course be sure to jump off of them before they end up flying into a pit, or get bounced in the direction that you don't want to go to. Once you reach the end of the area, you're in stage 5-3 and it's time for the next boss fight. For this boss fight, I'm going to go ahead and choose the Turbine ability and power up my charges to hit Pete. The boss for this stage is a cross between Pete and a walrus. As you can see, he's all bundled up with snow equipment, but he also has long tusks. Jump on top of his head when he slides back and forth between the left and right sides of the platform, and when he gets on the opposite side of you, charge up your blast so you can deliver a hit. When he stands still on a platform, he'll open up his mouth and launch 3 snowballs out in your general direction. Try to do your best to avoid these. Also, you're never quite sure what platform he may land on as he bounces back and forth between them and may do a spin in midair and go back to the opposite platform before landing. However, it shouldn't take too many hits, and once you defeat him, we move on to the final stage of the game. The final stage of the game is inside Emperor Pete's castle, and it's definitely the hardest level we've dealt with in the game. Most of the types of enemies we've already pretty much seen throughout the game, but they can be a little bit challenging, including archers that like to aim in on you before launching an arrow in your direction. The thing about this stage, though, is it is a maze, and there's multiple different exits to take, but only one is the correct one in each area. And finding that exit, especially in the first area, is a little bit tricky. We have these boxes that we must pick up. In order to use them, they'll get ourselves up into the air. Pick it up and then launch it in the correct spot about here so you can get up and get to the door in the upper right corner. Stage 6-2 takes us on a magic carpet ride. Switch to the Turbine Mickey and then use your power to cause the magic carpet to unfurl. You have to control it by moving quickly left and right, back and forth, in order to get it to go the left or right direction. But you have to keep moving it back and forth quickly enough so you don't end up running into spikes either on the ground, above you, or on the left and right sides. Just follow the maze as it slowly travels downward, and keep moving that magic carpet back so you don't take any damage. When you get to this area, you can actually jump off the carpet because you have a safe landing to go to, and we enter 6-3. This is the trickiest area of the game. You have these large cannons set up, and you have knights throwing out cannonballs at you using the cannons. You're pretty much going to have to take these guys out before you can actually move upwards. So change Mickey into his firefighter ability and then jump up so you can get just a little bit of the water stream over to actually hit the enemy. Then use the up arrow block so you can travel upwards to get up here. Try to do your best to avoid the cannons and work your way up to the platforms. When you reach up here, we once again have to switch to the firefighter Mickey. Use Mickey's water stream in order to cause the block to move over to the right. That way you can jump up to the next platform. There's several different exits in this area, but only one is the correct one. Do the same to this block, and then ride it upwards to the top. We'll have to move this block over just enough so we can get past it to get up here. You then have two choices. Make sure you pick the left side, and it takes you to the boss battle. The other exits will take you to another room where you end up battling a mini-boss that we fought earlier in the game. When we enter the room, we find out that Pete is quite large. Back away from him in your firefighter ability and jump up and hit him in the face with your water. You only can hurt him by damaging right about his chin level. Emperor Pete has several different abilities, one of which causes the different types of lanterns above you to turn into bats and fly towards you. He can also send a whole brick wall flying at you. Use your jet stream to move it backwards so you can end up getting a nice little opening of a gap so you can get through. The other one will cause 2 blocks to bounce out of the walls and both bounce across the screen towards you. Just do your best to jump over them. Sometimes it can be hard to move all the blocks away from you, so the best strategy is actually to duck down or just hit the bottom block and move those out of the way. Keep using Mickey's water until you end up running out of it. Once you do that, turn back into Mickey's Turbine ability, charge up your blast, and jump up and hit Pete right in the face with a big charged up blast. There won't be any new moves yet, until Pete ends up changing color. So just keep doing your best job of avoiding all his different attacks, and when you get low on your magic ability here, hopefully Pete will use the different torches above you to cause the bats to come down, because when you defeat them, you can end up getting extra ability. Late in the fight, Pete will summon gas from the ground to start popping up and trying to hit you. Thankfully, it comes out in a straight line towards you, so you'll know when it's about to go where you're standing. Pete's other new move will be a spark that comes out of his hands and glides across the ground. Just try to do your best to jump over it and keep delivering hits. Once he fades away, you complete the game and can enjoy the ending. So in the end, it was all in Mickey's head as he awakes from a dream and goes out to play a nice game of catch with his friends. While the Super Nintendo definitely had its fair share of great platformers, the Magical Quest series is definitely amongst them. Like many of the great Disney Capcom games, this game features fantastic graphics for its time, a good soundtrack, and the cool different abilities to change and mix up the gameplay. As the camera scrolls up to the clouds in the sky, we get the end screen, and with that, that's going to wrap up another edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.